Good Friday morning. I'm Stephen Romo, filling in for Joe and Savannah today. Right now on Morning News Now, back on track. Today, Southwest Airlines says it hopes to have service back to normal. That's after several days with thousands of cancellations. We'll show you what the airports are looking like this morning. Plus, the latest in Buffalo, New York. The city starting to reopen as several feet of snow start to melt. What conditions look like right now for people trying to dig out. Unsealed former President Trump's tax returns have long been the subject of legal fights and speculation, and now they're being made public. We'll take a look at what could be inside them and what this could mean for the former president. And remembering an icon, soccer legend Pelé has passed away at 82 years old. We'll show you how the sports world is paying tribute to the Brazilian star who popularized soccer worldwide. Also this morning, ringing in 2023, New Year's Eve is one of the biggest nights of the year for drinking. And it's also one of the toughest for people trying to cut back. We'll have some ways to enjoy the celebrations with family and friends without all that booze. A lot to get to this morning, but we do begin with the latest on the chaotic travel situation surrounding Southwest Airlines. Southwest says it's aiming to restore its normal service today after canceling thousands of flights this week. The airline's effort to get back on track comes as travelers all over the country now scramble to find their lost luggage and to get their money back from those canceled flights. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander has the latest from Atlanta.
Well, after days of what even the airline CEO is calling an unprecedented travel meltdown, today Southwest Airlines says it is ready to resume normal operations. Yesterday, for example, we saw more than 2,300 cancellations. Today, just 39. Now, the next order of business for people trying to get back home, and for some who already are home, is getting reimbursed. Some people had to shell out hundreds, even thousands of dollars in unplanned expenses. The Southwest executives say that they plan to reimburse people for things like hotel, even airfare that was booked on other flights to get home. But Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg tells me that he plans to watch them like a hawk. He says he will have Southwest under a microscope and is prepared to enforce tens of thousands of dollars in fines per passenger if they don't make their passengers whole. This is also something that he wrote in a letter to them. He sent a letter saying that he's outlining exactly what he expects to see from the airline when it comes to reimbursing passengers. Back to you.
A lot of people watching for that one, Blaine. Thank you. And turning now to the Northeast and the recovery efforts that are ongoing in Buffalo, New York. The city is getting warmer today as it digs out from that historic blizzard that dumped more than 4 feet of snow and killed dozens. And this morning, people from across the city are pitching in to help their neighbors try to get back on their feet.
I just want to get people out of their houses, get them what they need, for them to feel loved. That's really important, is to have your community show up and to know that people support you.
And there's still so many, needy people that are not able to get out of their homes. We've got elderly, we've got people with children that can't get out. And so it's cleanup time in City of Good Neighbors. We need to help everybody.
The driving ban throughout Buffalo was lifted yesterday morning, but a travel advisory remains in effect as the city looks at potential risks for any possible flooding as that snow melts in the warmer temperatures. And for more on the conditions in upstate New York and across the country, as well as your all-important New Year's forecast, let's check in this morning with meteorologist Angie Lassman. Taking a look at that forecast. Hey, Angie.
Hey there, Stephen. Things look quite warm. You mentioned it. We're going to have a big warm-up on the way, and it's already underway in a lot of places. You can see Buffalo specifically going to come in 19 degrees above normal for this time of year. So breaking that 50-degree mark. Afternoon temperature today, 53 degrees. Lexington, no different, just into the mid-60s and well above normal. Atlanta into the mid-60s as well. We even have a couple 70s out there for places like Houston. Now, as we head into New Year's Eve and even New Year's Day, you can see the warmth sticks around. It's going to feel very spring-like. These above normal temperatures will last at least through the end of the year and into this upcoming year. Temperatures in Raleigh, you can expect 64 degrees on Saturday and 68 on Sunday for New Year's Day. But there is rain in the forecast, and it's already impacting some folks, spreading from the Gulf Coast basically up into the Ohio Valley, and heavy rain at that. We've already seen some flash flood concerns in parts of southeastern Texas earlier this morning. We've seen some severe thunderstorm warnings as well. So we're going to continue monitoring this area right here as it continues tracking to the east. Now, a little farther to the north, it's just going to be rain for places like Memphis. On the west coast, also unsettled. We've been talking about those numerous storm systems that are going to march march on in, impacting folks from Oregon to Washington and into parts of California. Today, we're going to monitor parts of California for heavy rain, so that flooding risk with anywhere from 3 to 5 extra inches expected from central to northern California. Places like Eureka are going to be involved in that. And then those higher elevations above 7,000 feet in the Sierras, anywhere from 3 to 4 feet of snow. So unsettled and likely to cause a couple problems when it comes to travel over the next few days, because those storm systems are going to last through the weekend. On the East Coast, there's that system I told you about that's going to continue marching to the east. You can see this rain spreads into the northeast as we get into Saturday afternoon and into Saturday evening. I think that's when it'll impact New York City. I know a lot of folks are going to be around for that ball drop. The good news is, as we get into Sunday and we're celebrating that first day of the year, things will start to calm down. We'll have some drier skies, but we'll still see a couple of places in New England dealing with the rain as we get into Sunday afternoon.
Wow, that rain timing, though, for the ball drop.
Pack your poncho.
Pack your poncho. Way better than pack your patience. I love
Yes.
that. I'm going to say pack your poncho instead of pack your patience from now on.
Me too. Done.
All right, done. Thanks, Angie. We appreciate it. All right, let's get to Washington now, where we could get a clearer picture of former President Trump's finances today. The House Ways and Means Committee is set to release 6 years of his tax returns. Now, this follows a years-long legal battle by Trump to keep his taxes private, and comes after the Ways and Means Committee and the Joint Committee on Taxation released some summarized versions of his taxes last week. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos join us now for a closer look on this. So, Ali, let's start with you here. We did get those summaries of Trump's taxes just last week. So break down for us, if you could, what more we could learn by getting the full returns today.
Yeah, Stephen, good morning. Last week, we saw those two summaries from the Ways and Means Committee as well as the Joint Committee on Taxation. Of course, not the actual returns, because aide said that more time was needed to redact some sensitive information like Social Security numbers and contact information from these records. And there were some main takeaways just from those summaries alone. One of the big headlines being that former President Trump paid barely any federal income tax. As a matter of fact, less than $800 in the years 2016 and 2017, and none at all in 2020. And it also said that the IRS didn't even start auditing these tax returns until the Ways and Means Committee requested these records in 2019, more than 2 years into former President Trump's term, despite this being a mandatory process. So, of course, there's a lot of curiosity and eyes on what these full returns could reveal when they're released around 9 a.m. is what we're told. Some information around some charitable donations that we know he donated in between the years 2015 and 2020, any sort of real estate depreciation. So a lot more to be learned from this full report that's going to be released this morning.
Yeah, could get a lot more insight here. And Danny, let's bring you in here. What are the key areas of interest that, let's say, tax experts will be focusing on for these full returns?
Well, tax experts are actually going to tell us that, hey, these 750 years are the years where Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes are part of a carryover of these massive losses of $100 million. But it's maybe not so much what tax experts will tell us. It's how regular folks are going to react to this release of these returns. They're going to look at these and say, hey, how the heck is 40% or 30% of my income just lopped off by tax returns? And here's a guy with a private jet paying $750 in several different years. How does that work? Why does the tax code allow that? It's the tax experts that will tell us, oh, no, that's permitted. And in a sense, this isn't just a moral indictment of Donald Trump. The challenge for Democrats is this is a kind of moral indictment of the entire system, of the tax code and the IRS itself, which apparently just maybe dropped the ball on conducting presidential audits. I mean, audits of the most important person in the United States government. So it's a mixed bag for all sides here.
An important point. We can't forget public opinion in all this, especially as he runs for president again. And Ali, an interesting note here. The House Ways and Means Committee said the IRS failed to do its job for these mandatory audits of Trump during his presidency on a timely basis, that is. So how could the committee's investigation here affect presidents going forward?
Yeah, this years-long legal battle to actually get these records has much broader implications in a broader scope. Now, the Ways and Means Committee is actually trying to codify this audit process by the IRS into these presidential tax returns into law, because they're arguing that this was never supposed to happen and it shouldn't be able to happen again with future presidents, especially after decades of precedent and tradition and mandatory process in which this has happened. So they're saying not only should there be a push to codify this into law, there should also be a push to get the IRS the funding and the resources it needs to be able to do this, something that the IRS argues it didn't have, and that's why this wasn't done in a proper and timely fashion. The big question here is whether this is going to happen when Republicans take control of the House in just a few days. So definitely something we're going to be keeping an eye on as this new Congress is sworn in on January 3rd.
One of the many things we'll be keeping an eye on. And Danny, so we know Trump's business was convicted earlier this month on those tax fraud charges. So what sort of legal consequences could Trump face if his records have any evidence of, say, a crime or any possible involvement with foreign governments?
Well, right there, I'm glad you brought that up. That's, in a way, the beauty of the Donald Trump tax regime that he set up. The conviction of a Donald Trump business, what does that tell us about Donald Trump, the person? Well, we know from the report that he had a number of pass-through corporations. So Donald Trump has effectively insulated himself from tax criticism by having all these companies and this army of accountants. It would be very difficult to show in a prosecution or otherwise that Donald Trump had actual knowledge or participated in that activity. So really not a whole lot to be gained knowledge-wise from the conviction of the Trump company.
All right, Ali Rafa, Danny Cevallos, thank you both so much for that insight. We'll stay tuned for that one. All right, turning now to the war in Ukraine. The capital, Kyiv, endured a night of drone attacks. That's according to officials there. The military says all the 16 drones, which it claims are Iranian-made, ended up destroyed, although some damage ended up being caused by explosions. This latest attack comes after Russia launched another wave of missile strikes across Ukraine yesterday, leading to some power outages and several injuries. For more, we're joined by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So that latest series of missile strikes, it's similar to what we've been seeing for several months now in Russia. They're targeting energy infrastructure, causing those power outages. So what do you make of this situation now as a whole?
Yeah, you know, this was the 10th massive round of missile strikes that happened night before last. And then it was augmented this past night by a actually pretty widespread kamikaze drone strikes. And it wasn't just those in Kiev. And it appears that most and possibly even all of the drones were shot down over Kiev. But there were like another dozen or so other cities around the country where they didn't have quite that much success. And in fact, it looks like the targets of this second round were not the energy infrastructure, but the military infrastructure. Some of the missiles from the previous night actually were shooting for the anti-aircraft system. So it looks like Russia's trying to further degrade Russia's ability or Ukraine's ability to have anti-aircraft missiles. And it looks like they had some degree of success, but Ukraine is still, to their credit, being able to knock down a pretty sizable percentage of them.
It's still after 10 months after this all began. And you wrote a piece recently expressing skepticism over Washington's continued financial and military support of Ukraine. So if you could explain sort of your thinking there, and do you think the U.S. should stop funding Ukraine's war effort altogether?
Yeah, you know, the piece that I wrote there in 1945 that you're talking about was basically saying, hey, we need to have some burden shifting going on and a recognition that Europe has actually much more at stake in this whole situation than the United States does. And it shouldn't be that the United States has to carry a massive burden, now up to $100 billion just in this one calendar year, when the biggest European country is at about $15 to $12 billion. And you know, I believe that it's very appropriate that the United States can help Ukraine for sure. That's what we've been doing. But it's also important that the United States not just say, hey, we're going to cover for you, Europe, and we're going to take care of all the heavy lifting so you don't have to. Because remember, this is not a treaty ally we're talking about. This is somebody we're helping. And most importantly, we have to keep American national security interests up front, and we can't deplete our own sources and our own finances to our own harm.
Don't have a lot of time here left, but if Europe doesn't take on that burden that you're talking about, how do you see America's role going forward? And should the focus be on negotiations and diplomacy?
Well, I think negotiations and diplomacy should always be, up front, because, look, this war is not going over anytime soon. And militarily, based on my combat experience, especially in mechanized warfare, I don't see anything ending anytime in the near future. But I do see a lot of people continuing to die. And I think that it's in everybody's interest to find any kind of negotiated settlement to get this thing over with as soon as possible. I think that's in everybody's interest, including the United States.
Certainly a lot of people wanting that. All right, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, thanks so much for your time this morning. And coming up on Morning News Now, the latest on the condition of Pope Benedict this morning. We have the latest from Rome next, including the impact Benedict's health is having on Pope Francis. That's next. Welcome back. The Vatican is keeping a close eye on the deteriorating health of former Pope Benedict this morning after releasing a statement about his grave condition earlier this week. Officials say the cause of the Pope Emeritus' condition is due to his advancing age, but they have not elaborated any further. NBC News correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with the latest on Pope Benedict's health. And Claudio, good morning to you. So has the Pope's health improved at all over the last 24 hours? What kind of updates are we getting here from the Vatican?
Good morning, Stephen. Well, the Vatican hasn't updated as yet on the condition of Pope Benedict XVI. The last statement we got was from yesterday when they said that his condition, he's serious but stable, but also that he was absolutely lucid and alert. Now, in the meantime, ANSA, Italy's main news agency, said today that, according to their sources, the situation hasn't changed overnight and that this morning Pope Benedict XVI was even able to concelebrate Mass from his bed in his room by wearing a very light stole over his hospital gown. Stephen?
An interesting update there. So, Claudio, we know that Pope Francis called for that special prayer yesterday, and today there's a special Mass that is supposed to be held in Rome. So what do we know about that?
Well, the Mass and the special Mass and prayer for Benedict XVI will take place in the Basilica of St. John the Lateran. Why is that important? Because that's one of the 4 papal basilicas, but also the most important for a pope because it's the seat of the Bishop of Rome, which is, of course, the Pope, Stephen.
And we know the Pope Francis has a packed schedule heading into the new year, as he always does. So has his routine changed at all because of the health news surrounding Benedict?
Well, there's no news on changes of his schedule. His next big commitment is his travel to Pope Francis's travel to the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, a very challenging trip, especially for Pope Francis, who's having some difficulties walking. He needs to walk with a cane or he needs to be wheeled on a wheelchair. But so far, there are no changes on that schedule. Stephen.
All right, certainly going to pay attention to that one. Claudio Lavanga, thank you for that update. All right, heading to Israel now. One of the most right-wing governments in that country's history has now been sworn in. Benjamin Netanyahu is back as prime minister, heading a coalition that includes far-right, ultra-nationalist, and religious parties, some of which hold anti-Arab and anti-LGBTQ views. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us now for more on this. Good morning, Raf. Thanks for joining us. So if you could walk us through who's in this new cabinet and why has it just been so controversial?
Stephen, good morning. Many of Netanyahu's partners in government, as you said, are from the far right. These are people who previously were at the absolute fringes of Israeli politics, and now they're around the cabinet table. And I'll give you just one example. The new national security minister is a man named Itamar Ben-Gvir. He rose up through far-right activism. He has a string of criminal convictions, including inciting anti-Arab racism and supporting a Jewish terrorist organization. And yet, Stephen, he is going to be in charge of the police in this new Israeli government. Now, Netanyahu says he's changed since those convictions, which were some years ago. But as you said, there are a number of ministers here who have a history of homophobic statements, and there are very few women. There are about 30 ministers in this government. Only 5 of them are women, Stephen.
And another issue a lot of people are talking about, one of the government's promises to expand Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank. Of course, a lot of controversy there. A move that's actually considered illegal under international law. So what's the reaction been like from Palestinians to this new government?
They're very concerned. Netanyahu, all his ministers are united around the idea that they oppose a Palestinian state. They do not see a two-state solution, which is the preferred policy of the Biden administration going forward. 2022 has already been the bloodiest year on record for Palestinians in the West Bank, killed by Israeli military action. The Israelis have been carrying out a number of raids in response to terror attacks inside of Israel. But, Stephen, Palestinian citizens of Israel, so that's Palestinians who live inside of Israel, who have Israeli citizenship, they are also very concerned about what their future looks like when they are dealing with an Israeli police force that is led by Itamar Ben-Gvir, a man with such a history of extremism.
Certainly one to watch as well. So what's Washington's reaction been like to this new Israeli government? Could this affect relations possibly in a negative way?
Yeah, the reaction has been fairly mild so far. The line from the State Department is the Biden administration is going to judge this new Israeli government by its policies, not by its personalities. We saw a statement from President Biden yesterday where he congratulated Netanyahu on taking office once again. These are two men who have known each other for decades. They don't agree on a whole lot politically, but they are personally friendly. But on a policy perspective, the White House and this new Israeli government are kind of on a collision course. The Biden administration says it wants to see a two-state solution, a secure Israel alongside an independent Palestinian state. This new government under Netanyahu is saying that is a non-starter. There's also the issue of Iran. The Biden administration would like to see a diplomatic solution to try to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions. This new Israeli government much more hawkish, Stephen.
All right, more to come on that one, Prof. Sanchez. Thanks so much. All right, stick around. We have a lot more coming up with New Year's parties and increased travel. Doctors are concerned we're on the verge of another virus surge. Not just COVID, we're talking flu and RSV as well. And more states thinking about bringing back mask mandates. We'll have more on that coming up. Welcome back. Health officials are preparing for a potential new wave of respiratory illnesses linked to the so-called Tripledemic following a week of holiday celebrations as well as travel. It comes as more states are considering reinforcing early pandemic protocols, including travel bans and, yes, mask mandates. NBC News national correspondent Gadi Schwartz joins us now for more on all this. Gadi, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Stephen. Yeah, this is the last thing you want to hear heading into this weekend, but the numbers are showing the dreaded triple-demic continues as COVID, flu, and RSV cases are hitting communities hard, especially a new variant out in the East Coast that is now accounting for about half of cases in the Northeast. Medical experts are bracing for a rise in cases in the weeks after New Year's, but there are some things that people can do over the next few days to stay safe. Take a listen.
As countless revelers prepare to ring in the year among large crowds or New Year's Eve parties, medical experts are urging communities and families to be on guard.
We need to continue to stay vigilant. This is the third consecutive winter here in the United States where we're dealing with COVID-19 in addition to influenza, RSV, and other respiratory viruses.
Across the country, the Tripledemic is showing no signs of easing up, and experts say all three of these airborne viruses are still highly contagious among children and adults.
Distance, gathering, staying at home and avoiding others when ill, and continuing to promote vaccination as the primary means for disease prevention.
The City Health Department in Boston hosting a free vaccine clinic.
Yeah, I had a new baby this week, so just for the health of the family, thought it would be great to come in and get the next vaccination.
Boston schools now considering a temporary mask mandate when students return from winter break.
Our number one goal is to make sure that everyone is safe, and but mostly that the staffing levels can be where they need to be in order for schools to remain open.
Across the country in LA, the Pasadena Rose Parade, canceled in 2021 and hosted with a mask mandate in 2022, returns on Monday without any pandemic restrictions. But health officials there are strongly recommending attendees mask up.
I urge people, especially those who are most vulnerable, even if you're outside in these crowded spaces like at the Rose Bowl parade, go ahead and put that mask on.
Beginning next week, the U.S. will once again start requiring negative COVID test results from anyone flying from China to the States amid the latest surge in COVID cases there and fears concerning new variants that could emerge.
We don't know what variants could be spreading in China. So without knowing that, it's hard to know whether someone coming from China could be introducing yet a brand new variant.
And federal health officials say China's lack of adequate and transparent COVID data is what led them to start requiring those negative COVID test results for travelers again. They say the lack of reported data makes it hard for U.S. public health officials to identify new variants, while some researchers are estimating that China is still seeing as many as 9,000 COVID deaths a day. Stephen, back to you.
So many concerning headlines out of China. All right, Gadi Schwartz, thank you. Well, for a lot of us, the holidays are a time of celebration, but this time of year can also be really tough for people who are trying to cut down on drinking. Alcohol flowing at everything from family gatherings to parties with friends. Even talking about drinking at parties can be pretty awkward. So what can you do if you or a loved one is trying to cut back? Abby Stone is the Vice President of Content and Executive Editor of Well and Good and has a few tips for us this morning. Thanks for joining us, Abby. So New Year's Eve, of course, this weekend. How would you suggest celebrating if you're trying to avoid alcohol?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. There are a ton of reasons why someone might choose not to drink alcohol or to drink less alcohol. Pregnancy is an obvious one, but it could be that you just don't like the way alcohol makes you feel, or it's impacting your sleep or stress levels. So the most important thing you can do if you're trying to stay away from alcohol is just to remember that all reasons for not drinking, even if it's just I don't want to right now, are completely valid. And also that you don't need to drink alcohol to have fun. So if you're heading to a party this New Year's Eve and you know that alcohol will be flowing, there's a couple things you can do to make it easier for yourself. So the first thing you can do is let someone that you trust at the party know that you're choosing not to drink alcohol. This way they can help support you, or they can steer the conversation away from guests that might be a little pushier. And then the other thing I recommend is to bring your own, bring a festive non-alcoholic drink that you can sip on.
Some good tips there. So what if you have a friend or a loved one who's trying to cut down? If you're okay to have some alcohol, but they don't want it, how are we able to help them?
Yeah, so the most important thing you can do is that if someone tells you they're not drinking, you don't need to ask them why. It's really none of your business, and it really doesn't matter what reason they're choosing not to drink alcohol. So if someone says that that's their choice, just don't peer pressure them is the best thing you can do. And if you're the one that's hosting a party, a great idea is to make sure you have some really delicious non-alcoholic options available for your guests. And you can offer those to your guests right alongside your other drinks. So you could say, you know, can I get you a glass of champagne, or would you maybe like to try our alcohol-free punch tonight?
That's good and very considerate as well. And finally, what if you're not just talking about this weekend? What if you're trying to make drinking less or stopping drinking? What if you want that to be one of your New Year's resolutions? Do you have any tips for that one?
Yeah, and this is a super common New Year's resolution too. A lot of people do what's called dry January. So I'd say there are a few things that you can do. The first is to take a second to reflect on why this is a resolution that you're choosing. Having this end goal in mind, whether that's better sleep, less anxiety, or better long-term health, can make it easier to stay on track when you're tempted to reach for a glass of alcohol. Another thing you can do is limit the alcohol that's on display in your home. So give your bar cart a makeover with really fun, delicious, non-alcoholic options. If it's out of sight, it's easier to keep it out of mind. And then the last tip I would say is to take note of when you tend to drink and then find replacements, whether that's with other beverages or other self-care activities that you can do in that moment. So for instance, instead of having a nightcap after dinner, maybe try some tea or put on some music or take a bath if that's something that feels good for you.
All right, that's always fun, a nice bath. A lot of helpful tips. Abby Stone, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And coming up, the recent Arctic blast was pretty tough on us humans, but it was even worse for 1,000 bats. Yes, we're talking bats this morning, specifically in Texas, how an animal rescue was able to save them and nurse them back to health. You're watching Morning News Now. Welcome back. That Arctic blast that swept the country not only created dangerous conditions for millions of people, it also put animals at risk, exposing many of them to freezing temperatures. In Houston, 1,600 bats went into hypothermic shock from the cold snap. Wow, look at them there. They're falling from bridges to the ground. Luckily, members of the Houston Humane Society were able to rescue them. Mary Marwick is the wildlife director for the Houston Humane Society and joins us now for more on this. Mary, good morning to you. That is quite a task you had to undertake there. So explain to us the situation for people who aren't necessarily bat experts. What does hypothermic shock mean for bats? How are they affected by these temperatures?
Hi, thanks for having me, Stephen. Yeah, the hypothermia, what happened was usually Houston, we have very warm weather, including in the winter for the most part. And so we had a drop in temperature from like 60 one day to 22 overnight, and the bats just can't keep their temperature regulated at 22. So they started slowing down, their metabolism stopped, and they weren't able to hold on to the little crevices under the bridge any longer, and they all fell.
Oh, wow. It's so many bats we're seeing in this video. Yeah. I know that you were already able to release some of them, I saw, after you recovered them in your attic. So how do you nurse bats back to health?
Yeah, well, at first when we had, a couple of hundred, I could force feed them after getting them warm and getting them rehydrated. But we got 929 from one bridge, and that just got to be too much. So we decided that we would decrease their body temperature again, not enough to be frozen, but enough to decrease their metabolism so they wouldn't require force feeding. And that's when I put them in my attic.
Incredible. Force feeding bats to get them back to health. Yeah. That is quite the undertaking.
Yeah, they normally eat while flying. So when in care, they don't know what to do with insects when you put them in the cage. So you need to force feed them.
Wow, that is fascinating. So finally, I wanted to ask you, what should someone do if they find an animal in their area that may be suffering for hypothermia? I know Houston, lived there for 5 years. It doesn't often get that cold. What should someone do if they find a bat?
So particularly if they find a bat, if they're not vaccinated for rabies, which most people aren't, you want to wear heavy leather gloves or get a cardboard box and then get another piece of cardboard and just push the bat into the cardboard box. Close it, tape it, don't open it again until you find a wildlife rehabilitator. In Houston, you can call us at 713-468-8972. There's also a wonderful online service called Animal Help Now, ahnow.com, and you can go on there and put in your zip code anywhere in the country, and they can help find you an animal rehabilitator or wildlife rehabilitator.
Lots of help out there. All right, Mary Warwick, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Coming up this morning, we've covered a lot of major stories this year, of course, from national disasters to the hearings on the Capitol riot. 2022 had no shortage of big news. We're taking a look back at some of the biggest stories we covered here on Morning News Now. That's next. Welcome back. The Mega Millions jackpot still needs a winner. The prize, which has been growing since October, is now at an estimated $640 million. And after 3 long months and about 21 drawings, the life-changing jackpot just keeps climbing. So if you're feeling lucky, pull out your glasses, triple check those numbers, because the last drawing of 2022 happens tonight. And it's set to make history as the largest Mega Millions prize to be offered in the final week of the year. So if you don't have big plans for New Year's, I think maybe you could argue becoming a millionaire might be a good way to celebrate. Maybe. And an even earlier and better way to jumpstart the New Year's resolutions. Good luck to y'all out there. All right, back to business now, though. From major Supreme Court decisions to Team USA winning gold at the Olympics and everything in between, Morning News Now has tackled some of the biggest headlines of 2022. And now that we're on the brink of 2023, we're taking a look back at how this little show that could covered all the moments that will surely be talked about for years to come.
Just cue me and then stick a sock in it.
You're playing like Betty White out there. That's not what your girlfriend said.
Betty White died Friday, just 3 weeks shy of her 100th birthday. It's been 1 year since the U.S. Capitol was stormed, the symbol of American democracy. It came under attack. In the years since the insurrection, more than 700 arrests have been made.
The relationships and the trust in each other on Capitol Hill has been at a low point.
Tributes are pouring in for actor and comedian Bob Saget, who died suddenly yesterday at the age of 65.
During Breyer's retirement announcement,
announcement Thursday, President Joe Biden repeated his campaign promise to nominate the first black woman to the High Court.
The proposal is being slammed by LGBTQ rights activists who have dubbed it the Don't Say Gay bill.
The bill broadly prohibits school districts from encouraging classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity.
We begin this hour with the military invasion that's currently unfolding in Eastern Europe, the Russian attack on Ukraine.
I think the key thing is to ensure that our forces are postured in Europe to make sure that Putin doesn't think about taking one single step into NATO territory.
The 3 former police officers who were on the scene when George Floyd was killed have been found guilty on federal charges.
Just really happy that I got another shot at the Olympics.
Saying goodbye to my competitors. I'm sure I'll bump into them, but just to be in that situation with them, it's a rarity. And so I cherish every moment.
This video shows heavy shelling by Russian forces on a nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine.
Brittany Griner is a star basketball player in the U.S., but she is making international headlines after being arrested in Russia on drug charges.
G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it.
Moments later, Will Smith rushed the stage slapping Rock.
Love will make you do crazy things.
Did I miss anything?
The yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
All right.
In the town of Bucha, images emerge of some people with their hands tied, while reports say others appeared to have been shot at close range.
Indeed, this is genocide.
Deadly school shooting, yet another one. 19 young children and 2 adults killed when a gunman opened fire inside the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas.
We're a small community, and we'll need your prayers to get us through this.
The end of constitutional abortion rights in America.
This is the first time the Supreme Court has ever granted a constitutional right and then took it away.
A jury found Amber Heard liable for defamation against Johnny Depp and ordered her to pay $15 million in damages.
What does the reinvented Anna look like?
Hopefully, I'll be given a chance to focus all my energy into something legal.
Downtown Highland Park, Illinois is still locked down this morning following the attack at a 4th of July parade.
When we turned the corner and the second round of shots fired, my heart hit my stomach.
Breathtaking deep space pictures from the James Webb Space Telescope.
I was very, very excited, and this is truly the next generation.
The search of former President Donald Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago in Florida.
Classified information former President Trump allegedly took with him to Mar-a-Lago after leaving the White House.
Entire towns are still submerged, others completely cut off.
Took everything we had, and I've been there 8 years.
Ayman al-Zawahiri had been in charge of the terror group since 2011.
Justice has been delivered, and this terrorist leader is no more.
We are remembering Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest reigning monarch, who died yesterday at the age of 96.
It's just so dear.
She's been a role model for so many people.
This is what some neighborhoods in southern Puerto Rico are waking up to. Down trees, down power lines.
Everyone that's here, that's been on my side so many years, decades, oh my gosh.
A chilling picture of the catastrophic destruction left behind in Florida. Millions are still without power, homes leveled.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
CNBC reporting that Tesla CEO Elon Musk is now at the helm of the social media giant this morning.
Somewhere in the world, a newborn baby has the distinction of being number 8 billion. Humanity will mark this population milestone today.
The 22-year-old suspect walked into the LGBTQ nightclub and opened fire on the crowd. At least 5 people were killed, more than 24 others hurt.
Terrible tragedy at the University of Virginia. This morning, a student is in custody facing charges in the shooting deaths of 3 members of the school's football team.
Artemis 1 officially off the ground and on its trajectory to the moon.
Brittany Griner is back home on American soil, freed after 10 months of detention in Russia.
What's your mood?
Thousands of fans took to the streets of Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, to celebrate yesterday's thrilling victory.
I really think this is the best match we've ever seen. Argentina with the win, Messi hoisting the cup.
The Ukrainian leader ended his tour of Washington with a speech to lawmakers and the American people.
Ukraine didn't fall. Ukraine is alive and kicking.
More than 45 people are dead after frigid weather gripped the country.
We are in a war. This is a war with Mother Nature.
Quite the year, and a look back at 2022 would not be complete if we didn't give a shout out to the incredible team behind the scenes here at Morning News Now. So right now we want to take a moment to thank all the people that wake up in the middle of the night to put on this show each and every day. An incredible job, could not do without them. They are some incredible folks. And we want to also thank everyone else here who works so hard to make that a reality every single morning here at Morning News Now. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now. We have a lot more to show you here of that team. We want to thank them right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.